The committee will come to order. Today, the Senate Appropriations Committee will consider the fiscal year 2026 Appropriations Bill for military construction, Veterans Affairs, and related agencies. Following my opening remarks and Vice Chair Murray's remarks, we will vote on reporting this important measure. As I did last week, I would like to begin by thanking Vice Chair Murray and all the members of the committee, along with the committee staff, for their hard work during this appropriations cycle. Last week, this committee was able to report two funding bills, the agriculture and legislative branch appropriation measures. Each passed with overwhelming bipartisan support. Today, we continue our work to advance bipartisan appropriations bills that reflect the priorities of members on both sides of the aisle and the constituents they represent. I would note that the committee has received the House-passed version of the Military Construction and Veterans Affairs Funding Bill, and we will report it today with a Senate substitute. I want to also note that Leader Thune has indicated to me that he has every intention of bringing to the Senate floor the bills that we report. Just like last week's bills, the Milcom VA funding bill is a member-driven product. It reflects input from 89 senators who submitted a total of 989 requests. This legislation reflects many of the priorities of nearly the entire Senate. After the initial vote on the Milcom VA bill, I will recognize the subcommittee's able leaders, Senators Bozeman and Ossoff, to discuss their work, and we will consider any amendments. Let me commend both of them for their leadership and their hard work in developing the bill that we consider today. This bill addresses key needs for our military infrastructure, including housing improvements for military families. It takes care of our nation's veterans, to whom we owe an enormous debt, a debt that we can never fully repay. It helps to fund the VA healthcare system, makes investments to improve mental health care, includes programs to assist in the prevention of veteran suicide, homelessness prevention programs, supports our family caregivers, and expands care for our rural veterans. It also funds important veterans benefits, including disabilities pensions, the GI Bill, and employment training programs. Before I turn to Vice Chair Murray for her remarks, I want to state for the information of all the senators present, my intention to resume consideration of the Commerce, Justice, Science, and related agencies funding bill after voting on the Milcom VA bill. As it stands, that bipartisan drafted bill has been amended but currently lacks the support to be reported, a situation that I hope will change today as more information is provided to the committee. I would now like to recognize the Vice Chair for any comments she would like to make.
Thank you very much, Chair Collins. We are here today to resume consideration of the CJS bill and take up the Milcom VA bill. And I do want to thank our Milcom VA subcommittee leaders, Senator Bozeman, Senator Ossoff, for all of your hard work. It is a good thing that by working together, we were able to put together a solid bill that invests in folks back at home. This is the way this process should work. senators coming together and finding common ground on common sense investments. But I do have to acknowledge the elephant in the room here. It is no secret the path to advancing more of our bills is going to be harder because of the unprecedented partisan rescissions bill that Republicans just passed. It is extremely frustrating to see so many of the colleagues that have worked with us to pass funding bills turn around and vote to rip away the funding that we all agreed on. I've never seen anything like it because the Senate has never done anything like that before. We have never, until now, passed a purely partisan rescissions bill. It is a dangerous new precedent, and it poses some hard questions my colleagues across the aisle need to start answering. Because Russ' vote has not been subtle. Round 2 of these partisan cuts are on their way soon. He said that this morning. So what do my colleagues want to do? Do they want to turn this into the rescissions committee? Because that is one path we could end up going down. And as of now, we are one big alarming step down it. It is not the path I want to go down. I want to see us turn back to what has historically made this committee so powerful and so worth being on in the first place, which is working together to advance bills that deliver for our constituents and get signed into law. And it is unfortunate that many members of this body have voted to make that a whole lot harder. That is the reality, and there is no ignoring it. Now, I do believe our work here is as important as ever, writing bills that make the voice of the Senate and the voices of our constituents heard, instead of letting Donald Trump and Russ vote make the decisions with a forever CR. There is no doubt in my mind the bills that we negotiate together will be far preferable to the partisan House bills that cut like there's no tomorrow, or another slush fund CR. We've already seen this president abuse the power from the last CR to ignore our bipartisan decisions, spend taxpayer dollars as he sees fit, and rob money from blue states exactly as I warned about. We've already learned that lesson the hard way. We cannot throw in that towel again and let OMB hold up funding for our states or zero out projects we secured for folks back home. That's part of why bipartisan bills are so important. But everyone has to understand getting to the finish line always depends on our ability to work together in a bipartisan way. And it also depends on trust. Trust. And as I warned on the floor, bipartisanship does not end with any one line being crossed. It erodes over time, bit by bit. And frankly, I am alarmed by how quickly that erosion is happening right now over the last 6 months and certainly over the last 24 hours. We are racing in the wrong direction, and it is really on my colleagues across the aisle to decide if they're going to hit the brakes or go over the cliff. The question of whether forging a bipartisan path is hopeless or not will depend very much on whether this committee is able to lock arms and whether our colleagues will defend bipartisan deals from a budget chief who believes quite plainly that Congress and appropriators should have as little say as possible on federal spending. I appreciate that 2 Republican members of this committee ultimately took a principled stand against the partisan rescissions package. I really hope that more will join us in standing up for our power of the purse. Now, turning back to the bills before us today, the Milcon VA bill is one that I care deeply about. As the daughter of a World War II veteran, the programs we fund in our Milcon VA bill are very personal to me. Doing right by our vets, getting them the care they need and the support they were promised is a moral obligation. I'll have more to say as we debate the bill, including areas I'd like it to have done more. But the bottom line is, it delivers the funding needed to support safe and updated infrastructure for our troops and their families and to keep our word to our veterans. As the chairman noted, we will also retake up the CJS bill. I spoke last week about the serious concerns that I share with Senator Van Hollen, and it is frustrating that after a bipartisan amendment was taken up, instead of advancing the bill, we recessed and are now only taking it back up with consideration of a partisan amendment. My hope is that we can ensure the integrity of the process for the FBI site, and it's protected along with the prerogatives of this committee. I am prepared to see what happens as this bill moves forward, but I will probably vote no if this does not get addressed. With that, I will turn it back over to Chair Collins.
I would just note that there is another factor that is critical to the success of the Appropriations Committee, and that is having a majority leader who is willing to bring appropriations bills to the Senate floor, something that did not happen last year. I will now recognize Vice Chair Murray to make the customary motion to report the House Milcom VA bill with an amendment in the nature of a substitute.
Madam Chair, I move the committee report favorably H.R. 3944, a bill making appropriations for military construction, the Department of Veterans Affairs, and related agencies for the fiscal year ending September 30th, 2026, and for other purposes with an amendment in the nature of a substitute, provided the bill be subject to further amendment. Any further amendment increasing budget authority be offset by a reduction of equal or greater budget authority.
Thank you, Senator Murray. I note that we have a quorum present, and without objection, we will now vote to report the bill
Chair, sorry to be disruptive, but is there a point at which we're going to have some discussion? I don't want to.
Yes.
I want to make sure that separate and apart from amendments, that given the context that we have a discussion among colleagues, but I don't want to interfere with the vote. I just want to make sure that there's a place for that.
As the senator is well aware, the way appropriations operates is we vote to report the bill subject to amendment, and then after that is done, we do debate and the offering of amendments, which usually starts with the manager's package, but then any member is able to offer a germane amendment to the bill. This will be no different. So the clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
Aye.
Senator Murkowski.
Aye.
Senator Graham.
Aye.
Senator Moran.
Aye.
Senator Hoven. Aye. Senator Bozeman. Aye. Senator Capito. Aye. Senator Kennedy. Senator Hyde-Smith. Aye. Senator Hegarty.
Aye.
Senator Britt. Aye. Senator Mullen. Aye. Senator Fisher. Aye. Senator Rounds. Aye. Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye.
Senator Shaheen.
Aye.
Senator Merkley.
No.
Senator Coons.
Aye.
Senator Schatz. Senator Baldwin. Aye. Senator Murphy.
No.
Senator Van Hollen.
No. We'll have to see what the amendments bring later in this process. As we've discussed, this is a broken process. I mean,
Okay, we do
but I vote no.
have debate during the midst of the roll call.
Senator Heinrich. Senator Peters. Senator Gillibrand. Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
Aye. Thank you. On this vote, there are 25 ayes and 3 nays. The motion to report the bill favorably is agreed to. We'll now turn to consideration of the bill. Again, I want to thank the subcommittee for working together under the strong leadership of Senator Bozeman and Senator Ossoff, and for producing a strong bipartisan bill. I also want to thank the Milcon VA subcommittee staff for working to get this bill ready for this markup. As I said in my opening statements, this bill funds many important priorities for our veterans and will ensure that our military has the infrastructure it needs to fulfill its mission. Like Senator Murray, I too am the daughter of a World War II veteran who was wounded twice in the Battle of the Bulge and spent his last days in a veteran's home. So I know firsthand how important this infrastructure is. I'd now like to recognize Vice Chair Murray if she would like to comment on the bill.
Again, thank you, Chair Bozeman, Ranking Member John Ossoff, for your work to put together a good Milcon VA bill. I am pleased to say this legislation lives up to our nation's commitment to our veterans with the funding that they need and makes crucial investments to support our service members. The bill includes essential funds for VA care, including rural health, women's health, medical research, and the caregivers program I've long championed, and for the first time puts funding levels for these important programs in statute. It also expands the pilot I started to ensure that child care is not a barrier to any veteran who needs care, and increases funding to address veteran homelessness and mental health needs. When it comes to supporting our service members and their families, there are investments for nearly 300 construction projects, including new family housing construction and child development centers. There are also investments to bolster our footprint in the Pacific and support our NATO projects. Altogether, these are incredibly important to our service members and our veterans and our national security. So I will be voting yes.
Thank you, Vice Chair Murray. I'll now turn to the subcommittee leaders to explain their bill, and we will begin with Chair Bozeman.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair. I'm happy to join Senator Ossoff in presenting the fiscal year 2026-27 budget recommendation for the Department of Veterans Affairs and for the Department of Defense Military Construction. I want to thank Senator Ossoff for his partnership and hard work in putting this strong bipartisan bill together. And as always, we appreciate the example of the chair and vice chair in their ability to work together. As has historically been the case, this subcommittee is among the first to mark up a bill, and I'm proud to continue the fiscal year 2026 appropriations process today. As in years past, this subcommittee crafted the bill in an open and bipartisan way, and I expect to continue that today as we move to the floor for consideration. This bill takes into consideration the needs of our veterans, their families, and our service members. And within that framework, we have created a thoughtful path for both departments and our related agencies. The bill provides $153.5 billion in discretionary spending. Of that amount, the Department of Veterans Affairs is provided $133.3 billion in discretionary funding. When combined with $49.8 billion from the Toxic Exposures Fund, veterans medical care will be funded at the total of $163.6 billion in fiscal year 2026. This bill funds priority accounts to veteran suicide with $698 million for outreach programs, increased rural access to health care with $342 million in the Office of Rural Health, supports critical mental health programs with $18.9 billion, prevents veterans homeless with $5.3 billion, and provides funding for innovative medical research with $943 million. The bill also provides $253.6 billion in mandatory veterans benefits, including disability pensions, employment training programs, and educational benefits. We also provide advance appropriations for fiscal year 2027 for certain accounts, including $122.3 billion for veterans medical care and $262.1 billion for mandatory veterans benefits. This bill provides $19.8 billion to support military construction and family housing needs. The bill will give the Department of Defense the resources it needs to project power globally, enhance our warfighting capabilities, and train our forces. This bill also provides $1.9 billion to improve housing and quality of life for service members and their families. I also want to note that the bill includes $355 million for our related agencies, which include the American Battle Monuments Commission, the U.S. Court of Appeals for Veterans Claims, Arlington National Cemetery, and the Armed Forces Retirement Home. This year, the bill also includes several measures to tighten its provisions, including incorporating a new table by reference, eliminating a transfer authority, and adding several new statutory carve-outs for priority VA programs. Again, I want to thank you and Vice Chair Murray for your support in helping us to get to the point where we are, where we can present this bill to the committee today. I also want to thank again Senator Ossoff for his partnership in crafting this bill, as well as both of our staffs, Patrick Magnuson, Jennifer Baston, Michelle Dominguez, Brad Allen, and Gabriela Armanda. Given the lateness of the budget request, the staff did a tremendous job, yeoman's work, in crafting this bill in such a short time frame. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Chairman Bozeman. Senator Ossoff is now recognized for his remarks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I want to thank Senator Bozeman as well for his bipartisan work to craft this legislation, which will support vital and overdue construction and upgrades at defense installations in all of our states. Georgia is proud to host some of the most essential defense installations in the country. I know we all are proud of the installations in our states and the men and women who serve there, and this legislation makes important investments in those defense installations, in military readiness and military quality of life. This legislation also includes important policy to support the work of the VA and the sacred trust between the nation and those who have served in uniform to improve the quality and timeliness of the health care and service and benefits that they've earned. It also includes important bipartisan provisions to protect the VA workforce, to ensure that veterans are never denied care or timely access to care as a result of damaging or arbitrary cuts to the VA workforce. This legislation, I think, reflects real bipartisan work to support our military and to support our veterans, and I echo Senator Bozeman's gratitude expressed to our staffs for the hard work that they've done, again, given that the department was very late in providing their budget justification and their initial submission was incomplete. The subcommittee worked hard to work around that. I want to address a couple of other points, including those raised by Vice Chair Murray. First of all, at our last meeting, we raised this question about these votes that occur prior to debate and amendment, but I don't think we had a resolution of that discussion. And let me just share with my colleagues here, as a new member of this committee, that may be the tradition, but it's a silly one. And it's not explicable to the public why we would all vote on legislation prior to discussing and amending the legislation. So I want to raise that again as something that probably needs to change. Addressing what happened last night, as Vice Chair Murray said, the elephant in the room. If the Senate is going to have a serious appropriations process that requires 60 votes to pass bipartisan appropriations measures, but then partisan rescissions undo the work that we've done together, it's obviously deeply corrosive to this process. I fear that the enduring legacy of the Appropriations Committee in the 119th Congress may be the destruction of the bipartisan appropriations process if we accommodate the executive branch's demand that on a party line basis we rescind funding that we have agreed to on a bipartisan basis. Particularly where, as we saw last night in the political pressure cooker that we're in, even senators who have policy convictions that would lead them to oppose provisions of those rescission packages are unwilling to offer amendments or support amendments consistent with their views. How are we going to continue like this? It's something that this committee needs to grapple with seriously. But this legislation reflects serious bipartisan work to support America's veterans and defense installations. I thank colleagues for their support of this legislation. I hope that we can continue working toward the floor to pass appropriations measures that are in the national interest. And I yield. Thank you.
I will now turn to Senator Bozeman for the manager's package.
Madam Chair, I would like to offer a manager's package containing amendments for the fiscal year 2026 Military Construction, Veterans Affairs, and related agencies bill. This package is being negotiated and agreed to by both sides, and I ask that it be adopted by unanimous consent.
Are there any objections? Without objection, the manager's package is agreed to. Are there other members who wish to offer an amendment to the bill? Senator from Connecticut is recognized.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I know that Senator Merkley is going to offer an amendment shortly that will allow us to have a conversation about what happened last night and what I think is the real story that we need to be talking about today, the destruction of the bipartisan appropriations process that, frankly, brought us all here, that caused us all to fight so hard to be a member of this committee. But I first want to offer a relatively straightforward reporting amendment that I hope will receive bipartisan support. As many of you know, we had a 30-year consensus across the aisle that said if an individual has been adjudicated seriously mentally ill or mentally incompetent, that they should not be able to get a firearm. And that was relative to courts making those determinations, but also administrative bodies. So for 30 years, when the VA adjudicated a veteran to be mentally incompetent, that's the term of art in the statute, which essentially means they can't even manage their financial affairs. They can't balance a checkbook. They can't hold a bank account. The most common diagnosis in this category was schizophrenia. So these are really seriously mentally ill veterans, that they would have their gun rights suspended, pending a review and appeal process, which veterans are afforded. We attached an amendment, a rider to the appropriations bill a few years ago that restored to all of those veterans, even those with serious suicidal ideations and histories of self-harm, their ability to buy guns again. I'm not asking us to relitigate that question here, but I do think it would be important for us to get some information about the impact of a very serious change that we made. Obviously, the risk here is that when you are giving guns to veterans who have serious histories of self-harm, very serious mental diagnoses like schizophrenia, you are going to spike the suicide rate. And so this amendment simply says that there should be a report from the VA on information that they have, whether or not this population of veterans who have been adjudicated mentally incompetent by the VA have been committing suicide at an increasing rate. So this is simply an amendment to say, let's get a report on the suicide rate for this specific population to see if the decision we made a few years ago to allow this class of veterans access again to firearms has in fact resulted in a dramatic rise, as I worry it has, of veteran suicides. So again, not trying to litigate the underlying issue here, hoping that we can just as a committee say it would be good for us to get data to understand whether, whether this change has resulted in real harm to our veterans community.
Senator Bozeman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I appreciate Senator Murphy, again, working on this important issue. Veterans who are found by a competent judicial authority to be a danger to themselves or others are reported to NICS under current law. As drafted, I'm concerned about notwithstanding any provision of law relating to privacy of information. And then the other thing is there's nothing in this amendment as drafted to delineate whether the suicides to be reported involve a firearm or not. So for that reason, that we would oppose the amendment.
Madam Chair.
Senator Reed.
No.
I'm sorry,
Rank.
Senator Ossoff.
Yeah, I would just offer, I think this is a pretty straightforward reporting requirement. and that the committee and the Congress would benefit from more information and more data to make better policy. So I'll be supporting the amendment.
Senator Reed.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. There is a crisis in veteran suicides in the United States today. And no wonder, no generation of American fighting men and women have endured the kind of traumatic, constant deployments that this generation has seen over the last 2 decades at least. And as a result, we have serious problems with PTSD and other issues, schizophrenia, et cetera. There are approximately 6,500 veterans a year who die by suicide, and 70% of those involve firearms. So we have to ask ourselves, what is one way for us to reduce this? And it's first to do what Senator Murphy says, is look at the problem analytically and determine whether or not informing authorities and gun shop owners about the status of these individuals will save lives. They have literally given their lives in many respects for the country. And this is just a sensible analysis so that we can go forward with knowledge to make better policy, just to help our veterans. I'll just conclude by saying, I think everyone hears when they go back home a story about someone, a veteran, taking their life. Just a week or so, I was there, and one of my friends said, gee, did you hear about so-and-so? I said, no. He said, well, you know, he's about late 20s, and he seemed to be okay, but he killed himself 2 weeks before his wedding. We have serious problems here, and this deals with it, and I would urge passage.
Madam Chair, if I could just respond.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just respond briefly. This amendment does incorporate underlying privacy laws. So all this amendment is seeking is to get the aggregate data, the number of suicides within this population. Again, I just don't know why we wouldn't just want this information to point us in a future direction of policy.
Senator Vice Chair Murray.
Thank you. You know, every day about 17 veterans die by suicide. We can't ignore that. 12 of those 17 veterans die from self-inflicted firearm injuries. As Senator Reed said, that's 71% of the veteran suicides. Senator Murphy's amendment just allows us to understand how many veterans we have potentially lost to suicide because they might otherwise have been barred from purchasing handguns, but they weren't. So at a minimum, we should collect this data to know how this provision adopted recently is affecting veterans and costing lives. So I want to thank Senator Murphy for offering this amendment. I know this is a very personal issue for him, the issue of gun safety. I want to thank you for your work on that, and I really want to commend you for offering this amendment. I hope we can adopt it. It seems to be the most rational, easy thing we can do.
Are there further senators who wish to comment on the amendment? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Senator McConnell.
No.
Senator Murkowski.
No.
Senator Graham.
No.
Senator Moran. No. Senator Hoeven.
Senator Hoeven votes no by proxy.
Senator Bozeman.
No.
Senator Capto.
No.
Senator Kennedy.
Senator Kennedy votes no by proxy.
Senator Hyde-Smith.
Senator Hyde-Smith votes no by proxy.
Senator Hagerty.
Hagerty's no.
Senator Britt. Senator Mullen. No. Senator Fisher. No. Senator Rounds. No. Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin.
Aye.
Senator Reed.
Aye.
Senator Shaheen.
Aye.
Senator Merkley. Senator Coons.
Aye.
Senator Schatz. Senator Baldwin.
Aye.
Senator Murphy.
Aye.
Senator Van Hollen.
Aye.
Senator Heinrich.
Aye.
Senator Peters. Aye. Senator Gillibrand.
Aye by proxy.
Senator Ossoff. Chair Collins.
No. On this vote, there are 14 ayes and 15 nays. The amendment is not agreed to. Are there other senators wishing to propose amendments?
Madam Chair.
Senator Merkley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I will have later the amendment that my colleague referred to provide a platform for discussing the challenge we face in regard to the work of this committee and whether it's going to be undone on a partisan basis. But that's not this amendment. I'm calling up, first of all, Merkley number 1, Veterans Equal Access Amendment. For 10 years, we've gone through this process, have approved this amendment. I'm happy to take a voice vote on it. But essentially it says in states where cannabis is legal, that veterans can talk to their doctors about its appropriate role in their health care regime. To do otherwise is to restrict the free speech of doctors to do best by their patients, which is why this has been approved time and time again. And here on the 10th anniversary of its first introduction, I'd like to see us approve it again to support our veterans. We were just talking about the stress they face. Let them, in states where cannabis is legal, have a conversation with their doctor about whether there is a medicinal role that would be important and helpful to them.
Is there further debate on the amendment? The senator has suggested a voice vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it and the amendment is agreed to. Are there further amendments? Senator Rounds. Senator Rounds wishes to be recorded as a no vote on the amendment and will be. Are there further amendments?
Madam Chair.
Senator Merkley.
So, across the nation, states have been engaged in developing veterans' homes to provide an appropriate environment for retirement of veterans who have a special life experience and can be where they can get their needs addressed and also be in the community of others who have served in war. And the list has grown very, very long for the matching funds from the U.S. government. We now have a list of over 80 homes or renovations of existing homes that are waiting for the federal match. The funding that we have in this bill, as I understand it, will address only 6 of those homes. And by the way, those are just the 80-plus homes. Those are just the Priority 1 homes. There's already a list of Priority 2 where states have set aside the matching fund, but they're looking at this now and going, oh, we have this matching funds we've set aside to build a veterans home, and normally it's a 35-65 match, 35% from the state, 65% from the feds. But you know, at only doing 6 per year, wow, you know, we're 12 years away from our Priority 2 home even getting onto the Priority 1 list. So this amendment says, let's take care of this backlog. Our veterans are aging. Our veterans may well have died by the time we provide a match at this rate of only 6 per year. I'm going to withdraw this amendment, but I would like to plant the seed here for us to really think seriously that this is really an investment we should be making now. We shouldn't be telling our veterans there are 80-plus just in Priority 1 homes waiting to be built. States are developing matches, and we're saying, wait a decade, oh, too bad, you'll be dead. Sorry we didn't help you out. I don't think that's the right message or the right moral position to be in on behalf of those who have served our nation in war.
Madam
And with
Chair.
that, yes.
Madam Chair.
Senator Moran.
Madam Chair, thank you. I want to compliment and encourage the efforts by Senator Merkley in this regard. This is a significant issue across the country. It's a significant issue for
me and the state of Kansas, Senator Tester and I and the Veterans Committee worked to try to address this issue. I'm sure that the new vice chair of the Veterans Committee, Senator Blumenthal, is interested and engaged, but I want to let Senator Merkley know that as the chairman of the Committee on Veterans Affairs, this is a high priority for me. It's always a budget issue, and it's going to take some money to get this done.
Thank you all. Look forward to working with you.
Yeah, and we look forward to working with you also, Senator Merkley. Again, I have great sympathy. We've gone through this in Arkansas. Most of the members here have, had experiences with trying to get this done. The nice thing about being in the Senate is you can be on the authorizing and appropriating committee. I'm also on the authorizing with Jerry, and we look forward to working with you and trying to figure out a path forward. The other thing that's frustrating is you might be number 4 on the list one year and then number 15 on the list the next year. There is a rhyme or reason to it, but it's hard to understand. And we're committed to transparency and, again, trying to get some of these things built in a timely fashion.
Thank you very much, Senator Bozeman. And we don't have the FY25 list yet, so we only have the 24 list. So many folks who think they might be in those top 6 that will get funded by this bill may get bumped out.
No, exactly.
So extremely frustrating.
Are there further amendments to the bill?
Madam Chair,
Senator Merkley.
this is my last amendment, and it's really, I hope, to provide an opportunity for us all to discuss the challenge that we're facing right now. This committee does rescissions on a regular basis. We look at what we funded last year or in multi-year funding 2 years ago, 3 years ago, and proceed to say that funding is no longer needed, and we remove it through this bipartisan discussion at this table. What is new and different is to have what's done as a bipartisan work here in this committee undone as a partisan event on the floor of the Senate. We all are familiar with the idea that your handshake means something, that your word is your bond, and it's always been understood that the deal that we make here in this committee, that we will defend it. For a century, that's been the case. That century of standing by the work of this committee was broken in the early morning today. That is a huge challenge for our work going forward, and it is something that we all recognize can shift as the makeup of this committee shifts from being in the minority to the majority to the minority. So we realize that if the majority decides to, on a partisan basis, break the deal today, well, what happens 2 years from now when the minority is the majority? And the priorities that the former majority had, but they're now in the minority, the other side says, you broke the deal, we'll break the deal. Oh yeah, you wanted this, we wanted that, we worked it out, we had a bipartisan bill, we stood by each other. Oh, you broke the deal last year, but now we're in charge? We're going to ditch your priorities. We want ours. And that's not the future we want to end up in. I think we're so much stronger in terms of serving the American people when we bring the concerns of our various states to this room and partner with folks who have similar concerns regardless of whether we're in a blue state or a red state. We have forests in Oregon and we have forests in Idaho. We have ports on the West Coast, we have ports in South Carolina. I'm thinking about a couple of the deals in the past, like when Lindsey Graham and I both had a helicopter that might disappear because of the Coast Guard. We teamed up. We teamed up and preserved our rescue helicopters. When Senator McConnell and I both had CCCs that were about to be eliminated by the Secretary of Agriculture in the first Trump administration, we teamed up and we protected those. That's the type of spirit that has kind of inhabited this committee of of partnership and collaboration. It's been very common on amendments for people to be circulating and briefing each other, going to the other side of the table, finding the partner across the way. We're on the verge of losing all that. So I'm introducing this amendment in hopes that it will be adopted and in hopes that we can have an open discussion about this challenge that we as a committee are facing. My amendment explicitly says that the work that we do in this Appropriations Committee will not be subject to rescissions on the floor of the Senate. They can be subject to rescissions done in this committee. But that would be the bipartisan committee reviewing and doing what it has always done in terms of reallocating funds towards a better set of priorities as the world changed. So with that, I'm introducing Merkley Amendment number 4, rescissions exemption. I think it has now been, has it been passed out? It's been passed out, and would invite dialogue and discussion on this because I think this is such a serious turning point in terms of what is the work we're doing today and what is the work we're going to be doing down the road.
Senator Schatz.
Thank you, Chair. Russ vote this morning, or I guess it was yesterday morning, but published in the last hour, said the appropriations process has to be less bipartisan. The appropriations process has to be less bipartisan. He wants to change the paradigm of the way appropriations has worked, pointing to the continued use of stopgap spending bills. When asked if he could reassure appropriators that he would abide by bipartisan spending agreements, he simply said he would not. I really do worry that we are witnessing and participating in the demise of the appropriations process. We are still in possession of the power of the purse as a matter of constitutional law. But if we don't exercise it, then we don't have it. And I hope we adopt this amendment, but we don't have to act like this is some super complicated puzzle that we can't decipher. The question at hand is whether 4 Republican appropriators will do what we did in Trump's first term and say, we're the Article 1 branch, we appreciate you, we're going to work with you, but just as when the president submits the pres bud, we say, that's nice, now we're going to do our work. We're respectful about it. It matters to us what the president's budget says, but it is not dispositive. And the rescissions package last night, frankly, caused my trust to fray in a very significant way. And so the question for all of us is, do we want to reconstitute appropriations? And we don't have to act like it's complicated. We simply have to stand up for ourselves as a branch of government.
Are there further comments?
Madam Chair?
Senator Graham.
Thank you. There we go. As to Senator Merkley, he is the ranking member of the Budget Committee, and I've really enjoyed working with him. Believe it or not, we've done some things together. So let me give you my concern about this amendment. All of us have used reconciliation to get what we want that the other side wouldn't agree to. There's no Obamacare with us, so you went through the reconciliation process. The Trump tax cuts wasn't going to happen with y'all, so we did the Trump tax cuts, and we did the one big beautiful bill, and we'll see if it stays the one big beautiful bill politically over time. So the reconciliation process has been used by both parties under the 1974 Budget Control Act that allows us to do that. They're partisan exercises about reshaping the budget and getting things done that you want done that fit within the Byrd Rule. Y'all have done it, and we've done it, and it was there. It's been there since 1974. Rescission is part of that Budget Control Act. And what Senator Merkley is doing is amending the act in a way to avoid the fast-track process that the law gives us. So this is a military VA appropriations bill, and what would happen here is that if passed, it'd be a point of order against this appropriations bill because it would be changing the Budget Control Act that's in the Budget Committee. And I would obviously make that point of order. But a little bit about normal. I think I vote for most everything coming out of the committee because I like appropriating versus CRs. Been a pretty good supporter of the 150 account. I'm the chairman now, and I've been the ranking member. And here's what you got to understand. Last night was 0.1% of entire federal spending. And there are a lot of people out there in this country thinking, maybe we could reduce spending by 0.1%. If you listened last night, the answer is a resounding no, because of some of the programs, of which I have been generally very supportive of. But to my Democratic colleagues, you got to understand this. What we have found in the appropriations process is spending on things that are completely violates the trust. You have, in my view, Samantha Powers and others violated my trust. You'll have a hard time dealing with me in the future because I've been out there at my own political peril. Soft power is not, is something easy said, hard to sell. There's an isolationist movement in our party, and I've tried, along with my colleagues, to stand up to it. I've tried to say that if you help somebody raise their child with clean water and you provide vaccines, treatment for AIDS, that family would probably like America better. It's harder to recruit if you're, helping people, if you're ISIS or the Taliban. So I buy in the concept of soft power, big time. But what happened is destroyed my trust, that y'all care more about your liberal causes than the underlying premise of these bills. So I want you to hear it, Senator Schatz. You got a real problem with me going forward. You had control of this account for 4 years, and I am going home weekend after weekend. Why didn't you know about that? How could you, Senator Graham, authorize money to be spent on this garbage? I'm saying, well, we appropriated the money and people in the government spend the money and, these agencies have their priorities. The priorities that I support were obliterated. I want to save children from a terrible death in AIDS. I want to help stop mother-child transmissions of AIDS. Count me in for PEPFAR. But some of the money that's been spent has got zero to do with the underlying premise of soft power and everything to do with your pet peeves. So you've lost my trust. So I would urge you to vote no.
Madam Chair.
Senator Shaheen.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And I think this is an important conversation. I'm not sure that having it at the committee right now is as helpful as it might be if we could do it in a way that was less charged. But Senator Graham, you had me in terms of the need to reform the process. But so much of what has happened with foreign assistance since this administration took office has been reflected by Elon Musk holding the chainsaw and saying he was going to take a chainsaw to foreign assistance programs. If we're going to have a thoughtful effort that can engage people in how to improve those programs, make them more effective, eliminate the ones that don't work, I'm all in for that. But when the same misinformation keeps being repeated time after time about why we're eliminating these programs, and that LGBTQ opera in South America, never happened. That was not money that got spent for that. So don't tell me about that anymore. Don't tell me about the transgender mice, because that's not being funded by foreign assistance programs. They're transgenic mice that are used for research, and it has nothing to do with LGBTQ. So I'm happy to have a positive, thoughtful, bipartisan conversation about how we improve these programs. But we can't do it if we're going to attack each other and if we're going to complain about the conservative causes versus the liberal causes. This should be about what causes are good for the United States of America. That's the fight I want to have, and I'm happy to have it with all of you on the other side and see how we make the process work better.
Madam Chair?
I'm sorry. Who was speaking?
Madam Chair?
Senator Ossoff.
Yeah, I want to encourage us to slow down for a second and take a deep breath before we vote here, because this debate is devolving into a partisan one. And this is not, the question of this amendment is not actually a question of Democrats versus Republicans. This is a conflict between the Senate Appropriations Committee, whoever runs it, and the Budget Office and the executive branch, whoever runs it. And this is a pretty significant vote, not about how funds are spent, but about who decides, who has the power of the purse. The question here is, if we appropriate funds on the floor with 60 votes, can those funds then be pulled back with 50? And what we saw last night, and it wouldn't matter whether the Trump administration did it, if the tables were turned and a Democratic administration had done that, then I think this conversation would be happening right now precisely inverted. This is not a Democrats versus Republicans question. The question is, are we going to defend the power of the purse in the Congress? What we saw last night was, again, even when senators objected to the rescissions, the nature of the politics was such that they couldn't be defeated. If we appropriate funds with 60 votes, it should take 60 votes to rescind the funds. And that's what Senator Merkley's amendment does. So rather than like suiting up shirts and skins here and getting into the culture war stuff, let's really think carefully. This is an important vote. This is an opportunity for this committee to assert itself.
Senator McConnell and then Senator Murkowski.
The one thing we all agree on is the appropriations process is broken. For 18 years, I ended up being involved in these discussions when we didn't function and fielding all the requests coming in from people who were disadvantaged by the process. I've concluded, let's forget for a minute who's in the White House and who's in the majority here. I've concluded our failure to pass our bills empower every president, regardless of party, because I've been in those discussions at the end. Big Four and the guy with the pen. And that makes all of our requests irrelevant. So what Senator Thune and Senator Murray will end up doing when we don't function is sitting there trying to take care of a massive number of things that were never voted on because we didn't do our job. So I think we've met the enemy, and it's us. Now, I believe the current majority leader will bring up bills. The more we bring up bills and function, the more discretion we'll leave to ourselves. So this is not a question of who happens to be in a good position at the moment. But if Congress is going to exercise its responsibility to appropriate funds, we got to function. Otherwise, we have given to the president extraordinary power and weakened our opportunity to represent our states and our interests. So I'm hopeful the current majority leader will give us a chance, as the chairman has said, on the floor, which then gives everybody else a chance to have an imprint. And I think that they expect our constituents expect us to not be completely irrelevant. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Before I turn on to Senator Murkowski, who has been very patient, I want to recognize that Senator Kennedy is here despite being ill. And I would ask you, I would ask to permission, I would ask unanimous consent that he be allowed to record his votes on reporting the Milcon bill and the CJS bill. Is there objection? Senator Kennedy, how would you like to be recorded on the Milcon bill? And how would you like to be recorded on the CJS bill? Thank you. And I appreciate the cooperation of all members. And thank you, Senator Kennedy, for coming in off your sick bed.
Senator, could I ask Senator McConnell a question? Senator McConnell, would you yield for a question?
No. Oh, are you calling? I'm sorry.
The vice chair has a question for Senator McConnell. And again, I would beg Senator Murkowski's indulgence.
I listened very closely to the former majority leader's comments about this committee, and I don't think there's any of us that don't disagree that getting these bills on the floor and getting all members a chance to participate, have their amendments, have their voice, and be able to vote on them is the correct way to go. I think what the concern is here is that if we should do that and be successful, and I would hope that we can be, how do we stop an OMB director or an administration from coming in after we vote for that and moving to rescind the funds that we all agreed to on a vote with the majorities that we have, whether it's a Republican or a Democratic president? What Senator Merkley's amendment just does is say once we pass these bills, that the money can't be rescinded. We spoke out about our power of the purse, voted on it. How do we then not trust that the agreements that we came to and the compromises that we all have to make and the amendments that pass, some don't, won't just ever matter again because an administration can come in with a rescission, reminding ourselves that what happened last night has never been done before. That is, I think, the concern on this side and the trust that we have to have moving forward in order to have those bills on the floor, make those amendments, and pass them. That's I think, the concern I have that I hope that you understand as we try to move forward here.
Senator Murkowski.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I'm glad the conversation has kind of dialed back from relitigating the merits of what we had in front of us last night and who supports global health and who supports or who doesn't support making sure that starving children are fed. We do need to be asking ourselves how we move forward as appropriators. And I appreciate your statement, Senator McConnell, about having the ability to advance these measures to the floor. That's what makes us relevant. There's a lot of good work that goes on here. Last night, for me, was very personally frustrating because it was. These were measures that I cared about. Some of you had a different view. But they were matters that we had authorized and appropriated to and had been signed into law. Now we were dealing with them. Senator Schatz, you made one comment that struck me. You said, all we need to do is to kind of help address the challenge that we're facing here as appropriators and not being relevant is we need to find 4 Republican appropriators to basically help out. I would dispute that. I think what we need to find is if there's going to be a rescission that moves forward, it needs to be a rescission that is a bipartisan rescission from the beginning, one where folks in the administration have come to us and have said, do you realize that this is in this measure related to global economic disaster or child nutrition or whatever it may be, to have that conversation, to have that engagement with us, to shape a package that we, not just we as appropriators, but we as members of the Senate who under Article 1 have this authority of the power of the purse to say, you know what, that shouldn't have been in there. And I'm not quite sure who was responsible for it, whether it was Samantha Powers or somebody else, but it shouldn't be in there, and we agree, and there's a process that we can follow that will not divide us into partisan camps, but will actually elevate the work that goes on here in the Senate, in the Congress, when it comes to the power of the purse and appropriations. I will tell you, I am super offended. I'm not frustrated. Apparently that's the word you're supposed to use when you're talking to me. Murkowski's always frustrated about everything. Today, when I see the OMB director say, tell us, challenge us, you guys should be more partisan. What that tells me is there are people who don't want us to be relevant, who don't want us to come together and work through these issues and these problems. And so I'm going to take that as a personal challenge. I'm going to say, no, I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that we are able to do bipartisan initiatives, that we are able to actually make our process work without having the OMB director be the one that is going to, quote, change the paradigm of the way that we do our jobs here. They can have input. That's totally fine. That's totally legit. But we have a trust deficit. That's probably an understatement. But it's up to us to address it in a way that is befitting of the responsibility that we have when it comes to stewards of the taxpayer dollars. So we got our work to do. But to the Merkley amendment, if I may, I'm going to oppose it, Senator Merkley, and I'm going to do so because I want to respect the jurisdiction that comes with the various committees that we have. And this jurisdiction, as the chairman of the Budget Committee has noted, does not lie with us. It lies with the Budget Committee. So I'm going to be pushing you, Lindsay, to make sure that we don't find ourselves in this situation where we are delivered a wholly partisan rescission package, told to take it or leave it, and put us in the same situation, a rerun of what we had last night. That's not good for those of us that have done that, and it's not good for the institution.
Madam Chair.
I would note that we're 15 minutes into the vote, so I would hope we could wrap up this debate, which is very important. Senator Kennedy.
Let me answer Senator Murray's question because it was good. Let me answer Senator Murray's question because it was a good one. Her question, as I appreciate it, is how do we deal with rescission? A president, any president, has the right to send us a rescission package. You and I have the right to vote no. But when we appropriate money, and this to me is what it's about, it's not about how many lawyers can dance on the head of a pen. And it's not about a law review article. Article 1 versus Article 2. The American people care about, because American people don't care. They pay us to care. American people care about the cost of living and how their money is spent. And when we appropriate money to a president, any president, and they spend that money on male prostitutes in Haiti, on condoms in Zambia, on electric buses in Uganda, I want to know about it. I never heard it from this committee, for damn sure. I heard about it from the White House. And I'm damn glad they told me. And I'm going to vote to get rid of that stuff every single time. And if you don't want to agree with me, I'm saying you do or don't, Patty, but you have a vote. But the president has the right to send us a rescission package and say this is spending porn.
Senator Bozeman.
My work here is done.
Senator Bozeman.
The only point I would make is, as I said earlier, we're blessed. We get to be appropriators. We get to be authorizers. This is an incredibly important discussion, but it is in the wrong place. Senator Graham is the chair of the authorizing committee. He's raised the point of order. He will do that to the parliamentarian, rightfully so. I've had things kicked out. Most of you all have had things kicked out if you've been doing this very long. One of the most contentious things that we see is from people that aren't appropriators, that are just on the authorizing committee, is us legislating, in their jurisdiction. So for that reason, we can take a vote, and regardless, it's not going to make any difference. But I do think that, you can't have it both ways. We can't say one thing is wrong and then go ahead and do something that's blatantly wrong in order to fix that. So for that reason,
Senator
we need to
Murphy,
vote.
Senator Graham, Senator Hoeven, I truly would ask you to try to really limit your comments.
Listen, the first thing to say is that if you have complaints about the way that money is spent, then talk to the administration about changing the way the money is spent. That's not what a rescissions package is about. Every administration has the ability to cancel contracts, to determine new ways to spend money. This is fundamentally about obliterating the trust that we have built here. This authority has existed since the 1970s for 50 years. I counted, there's been 8 times when one party controlled the White House, the House, and the Senate. 8 times where the majority party had the ability to do what Republicans did last night, to undo a bipartisan spending bill through a rescissions package. In 50 years, it's never happened. So yes, both parties use the reconciliation process. Yes, there are trust issues with both parties, but never before in the 50 years that we've been living under the rescissions power has a party done what they did last night, to undo a bipartisan agreement with only the votes of the Republican Party. And what Russ Vought said this morning, right, not coincidental that he gave this speech this morning, is extraordinary. He said that there are more rescissions packages coming. He said no voter in the country went to the polls and said, I'm voting for a bipartisan appropriations process. The appropriations process has to be less bipartisan. What he is telling you is that there are more rescissions packages coming. So Senator Britt and I have the toughest subcommittee budget to negotiate. It will involve trades in which Republicans get certain things that are priorities to them and Democrats get important things to us. But what we now know is that that agreement will mean nothing. It will not be worth the paper it is written on, because the White House has told us that they will then send up a rescissions package that will eliminate the Democratic priorities.
Senator.
So Senator Collins, I just don't know how we proceed, especially with the very clear statement this morning from the White House that every single bipartisan agreement we come to from here on out is going to be subject to a new rescissions package.
Well,
Senator
I
Collins,
obviously don't agree with the comments made
Senator
by
Collins,
the
I
OMB director.
I do think it's important to note in the question of jurisdiction, which was raised by several members, this is joint jurisdiction. The rescission packages do involve the work of this committee. We saw that last night. Those were appropriation accounts being cut. This is joint jurisdiction. So in terms of jurisdiction, I do want to clarify that.
So we've consulted with the parliamentarian's office, and this particular proposal, as drafted, falls under the jurisdiction of the Budget Committee, and as such, if we include it in our bill, it would violate the Congressional Budget Act and be subject to a point of order on the floor. Senator Hoeven, Senator Graham.
We had exactly no appropriation bills that went to the floor last year. Exactly none. Now, we could sit here today and complain about that and go on and on and on about it, but it ain't going to get us anywhere. So we better just start working together and have amendments that realistically will enable us to move these bills to the floor, and then we can have some floor debate. But we're either going to get something done and get these bills to the floor, which we now have the opportunity to do. If we move these bills out here, we're going to the floor, guys. So let's get that done. I call the question.
Senator Graham, Senator, very quickly, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Senator Murkowski made a good point. I think to most of my Democratic colleagues, I think if you'd known about some of this stuff, y'all would have said no. Some of it yes, some of it no. I mean, if we have a program to train gun owners in Serbia, y'all probably wouldn't like that. I could see where some of our guys start doing this stuff. So what I'd like to do is figure out, like, let's get ahead of this. I don't know how Doge found it and we didn't. I think that's what's got me going, is how did they find this stuff and we didn't? And if some of it's fake, well, I'm open-minded to say it's fake, but all this ain't fake. So we need a process sort of to make sure this doesn't happen again. Now, there was an effort by Bush to do a rescission package, and it fell short in votes. So it has been done before, and my hope is that rescission packages will not be the norm for the reasons y'all said, and that we can find better filters so we don't get ourselves in this mess.
Senator Britt,
And Madam Chair,
I'm
I'll
going
be
to
super
call on
quick.
you, but then I'm going to ask the clerk to call the roll, but would encourage members to continue conversation after the votes and to return here.
Madam Chair, I would like to have a close to respond to a few things before we vote.
Madam Chair, I'll make it really quick. I think this is an actual healthy conversation, and many of you have had to listen to me on both sides of the aisle talk about this. When we look at us not doing our job, that's exactly what has happened. I mean, when I went back, and I know that you're new on this committee, but when the last time that we did our job was FY27, when we got these bills passed on time. If you look at passing them on time individually, it was FY95. So we're talking about over 30 years of dysfunction. And I think if we want a say in this, which I believe we should have a say, that's the way the Constitution intended, we've got to work together to get these bills not only out of this committee, but we've got to put leadership on both sides to put them on the floor. Now, we can point fingers all day long. One of the things that we did do in our leadership election was tell our leader, whoever he was, he had to bring these bills to the floor. And that's so we have an opportunity to actually pass them and have true bipartisan buy-in so that then we can actually do our job and have our say. So I would just encourage this group to continue this conversation, to be honest about it with each other, because I think getting it working is what's best for the American people, and it is no doubt what's best for this body.
Senator Merkley.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the discussion, and I think we need to continue it. We need to keep wrestling with this. The status quo for this committee has been to do rescissions through this committee process. That's where we have done them. That's where we have done them since 1974. So it isn't a question of rescissions or no rescissions. It's whether we're going to keep that bipartisan effort and dialogue so that we are working together for the future of our country versus doing a partisan affair on the floor. Mr. Vogt made it clear that more packages are coming, and he said in that interview, he said, an appropriation is a ceiling, not a floor. This is essentially what was adjudicated on the line item veto by the Supreme Court, and he disagrees with what the Supreme Court decided. He thinks we can delegate to the president. The president can choose any funding level, impound, stall, freeze, pocket rescission, so forth. That's absolutely a challenge between the executive branch power and the constitutional responsibility of the power of the purse being with us. I will note that my amendment does not amend the Impoundment Control Act, that a budget point of order could be raised, but we often can overcome with the support of the Budget Committee, with the committee, 60-point, if we want to defend the work of this committee. How do we get bills to the floor? That's a very important question, and I thank Senator McConnell for pointing that out and several others. I've already briefed several of you about how we can expedite the process of getting bills to the floor. When's the last time a member of the minority said, I want to help out, even when we're in the minority, make this process work better? So while not a discussion for today, I'm handing this out. I'll continue talking with all of you about how we make sure, because if it takes 3 weeks to do a single bill, we will never get more than one single bill to the floor. So please hold that aside. I will ask for a vote on what's before us, but I also ask all of us to continue wrestling with this question on how we work together as a committee to defend our bipartisan effort.
Thank you, Senator Merkley.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm now going to ask the clerk to call the roll on the Merkley amendment.
Senator McConnell.
No.
Senator Murkowski.
No.
Senator Graham.
No, I think. What do we vote now?
The Merkley amendment.
No, he withdrew it, didn't he?
No, he didn't.
No, it didn't reach, that was the earlier one.
No.
Senator Moran. Senator Hoven. Senator Bozeman. Senator Capito.
Senator Capito votes no by proxy.
Senator Kennedy.
Senator Kennedy votes no by proxy.
Senator Hyde-Smith. Senator Hagerty.
Votes no by proxy.
Senator Britt. Senator Mullen. Senator Fisher. Senator Rounds.
Votes no by proxy.
Senator Murray.
Aye.
Senator Durbin. Senator Reed. Senator Shaheen. Senator Merkley.